Hello, my love. Okay, so the birds are wildin' today. I don't know what's going on, but they're like playing with rocks on the roof. I don't know what that's about. So if you hear weird bumps and things, that's what that is. But anyway, in today's video, I wanted to chat a little bit about the difference between fear and intuition because this is something that came up as I was creating the piece that you're watching me create today. This is an illustration of my female main character for the novella that I'm writing. Last week, I introduced you to the male main character. I didn't tell you his name. His name is Maru. So this week, we're working on the female male character. What am I even saying? Oh my god. Okay. The main character, her name is Sutanda, and this illustration that you're watching me paint right now is not the original concept that I was going with. This is something that has changed, or it's a change from the original idea that I had. So I wanted to talk about the difference between fear and intuition because this is something that came up when I arrived at the crossroads of this certain point in the previous iteration of this illustration where I was like, something is wrong, something is off, and I have a choice. I either press through or I start over or start something completely different. And I think if you're an artist or a creative person, you have come to this crossroads many times. If you're a beginner, you will come across this crossroads many, many times. So I feel like this is an important distinction to make, and it's something we don't talk about a lot. We don't really highlight, but I think we all experience, and I wanted to just share my insights from what I've learned navigating the tension or the distinction between intuition and fear. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. Get cozy, draw along if you want to, and let's dive right in. So as I was working on this illustration of Sue, that's what I like to call her, Sue, that's my little nickname, or rather the previous iteration of this illustration, I had hit this crossroads moment because something about the illustration felt like it wasn't working. It didn't really feel like her. And so for Sutanda in particular, she's a very sweet and soft character, very innocent in her demeanor and almost ethereal in her beauty. At least that's how Maru sees her. Angelic almost. And so I wanted the illustration to capture that essence of her. And my previous iteration, I felt like she just wasn't coming through the way I needed her to come through. And something just felt off. And so I reached this moment of like, okay, do I lean in? Is this a moment where I need to trust the process? Because I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. The illustration wasn't looking right. And I was like, ugh, I'm feeling uncomfortable and I just want to stop. And so I wanted to understand the tone of that discomfort, because depending on whether it's coming from a place of fear or it's coming from a place of intuition, it's going to inform what I do, whether I keep going or whether I stop. So I want to dive into that, the difference between fear and intuition and why it's important really that we understand this. So I think it's really interesting that as artists, we tend to struggle with fear a lot of the time. And I think it's because the work that we do is like really vulnerable and it can feel very exposing. And, you know, the thought of people witnessing us in our authentic expression can be really, really uncomfortable, depending on the kind of relationship that we have had with being seen, being witnessed, with being vulnerable, emotional, whatever it is. However that was received in our upbringing, it kind of filters through everything that we do, and we can be afraid of really reaching for and trying and creating the things that matter most to us. And so I found that fear tends to keep you small. Fear tends to keep you in your comfort zone. Fear is protective, right? Very important. If there's a tiger, we want to be afraid of the tiger because our lives are in danger, right? So it's that kind of same energy, like I just mentioned, being vulnerable, being exposed. If our art is controversial to certain people, it might mean like being excluded from the community, and those kind of things are very scary to us, and we will want to avoid them. But the thing is that our growth and impact lies just beyond that comfort zone. So if we really want to create the meaningful, impactful work that we desire to create, it's important that we're not operating from a place of fear, that we're not letting our fear hold us back and keep us in our safe zones, right? And our comfort zones. We don't want to completely leap out and try to do something that's way, way, way beyond our current zone of comfort, but we just want to constantly be stepping beyond what we think is comfortable for us, because I think that's where our most impactful work lives. Intuition for me, on the other hand, is like that internal guidance system. And I feel like it's the guidance system that does sort of call you out to venture beyond your comfort zone. And a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the times, intuition will ask you to do something uncomfortable. Intuition doesn't ask you to run away from discomfort. Intuition asks you to lean in a lot of the times. There's a lot of trust involved. There's a lot of, you just kind of know something. You feel the knowing of it. It's not charged the way fear can be. Fear can have this like intense charge to it, a sense of panic, a sense of urgency. Whereas intuition is just like this knowing, like, you know, the way you know your name, like there's no drama around when you know your name and then somebody calls you, you're like, yeah, they're talking to me, unless you're in a space where somebody has the same name as you, but you know your name, you know your name. In the same vein, you know the things that are right for you. You know that, okay, this is something that is in alignment with me, and you know when something is out of alignment with you. The problem is when we grow up in environments that are misattuned to us and we don't fully learn who we are. It's kind of like learning the wrong name. Like you think your name is Susan when it's actually Jenny. I don't know. And so every time you hear Susan, you think they're talking about you, but they're not. You're actually Jenny. You didn't know that you were actually Jenny. And sometimes a lot of us, we have to reconnect with our intuition and get to know our intuition all over again so that we can understand who we truly are, because your intuition, for me, is always the voice of your authenticity. Your intuition is always telling you the truth about who you are. And it goes beyond the conditioned self, your conditioned way of being. So art can be a very powerful way to explore this nuance, this when we're operating from a place of fear and conditioning and like, oh my gosh, society says that art is meaningless and like there's no point in doing this, and so we're afraid of doing it because, you know, we don't know how it's going to be received, versus I know this is who I am to the core of my being, and I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And leaning into that and learning how those two voices play out within our psyche, I think is really important. So really, to just sort of bring this together, when I think about the difference between intuition and fear, fear pulls us away from something, pulls us away from discomfort, and intuition is usually pulling us towards something. It may be telling us to stop and go, like stop doing something, but it's usually pulling us towards something else. And it's usually something that's more aligned with our authenticity. So how it played out for me with this particular illustration is I got to that awkward, ugly phase and I felt like something was off and it was not working. But I took a break. I took a pretty extended break of a couple hours. I think I even slept on it. And then the next day I was kind of looking at it and I was like, okay, what are we gonna do here? Are we avoiding the discomfort of the ugly phase where I'm like, oh, I don't know, is this gonna work out? Can I make this work? Or is there something fundamentally off about this piece and I need to start over? And when I thought about it, I felt like the problems with the piece were very fundamental. Like on the whole, it just did not feel like the piece that I was working towards captured her essence in the right way. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make a call. And right now I'm at the point where I understand that like I don't put a lot of pressure on these things because I know I'm gonna keep making art, and it's okay if one moment I'm making the decision from a place of fear, as long as I keep trying to understand when I'm like, okay, intuitively I feel like I know something needs to change. So I made the call. I was like, I'm gonna start over. And I felt like it was coming from a place of intuition where I was like, something is off and I need to move towards something else. I felt pulled towards something else more than I felt like I was avoiding the discomfort, because I sat with myself. I was like, I am feeling uncomfortable and I'm willing to feel this. I'm willing to sit in this discomfort and press through to see this illustration to the end. But that doesn't seem to be the main issue. It seems like there's something more, and I feel like something else is calling me, that there's a better way that I can approach this illustration, and I feel called to find out what that is. So that's just kind of how I sat with how things felt, and came to the decision that, you know what, we're gonna scrap everything and we're gonna start over. And I'm so glad that I did, because this illustration of her, when I was done, I was like, that's her, that's Sue, 100%. It felt so aligned and so right. And a lot of the times you will only get the validation for your intuition in hindsight. You'll be like, yes, that was correct. That was exactly what I needed to be doing. Versus when you have made the decision out of fear, you're gonna find that the same lesson sort of presents itself in the new illustration or the new artwork that you're working on, or the new creative project. If you're like, I'm gonna leave this project and like start a new one, the same issue is going to present itself and you're going to have to face it all over again. So that's really how you know. Sometimes there's just no way to know ahead of time, but just that's how you build trust, right? You just make a decision and you're like, okay, you're gonna see how this goes. Okay guys, so that's basically what I wanted to chat about. I don't know if I made much sense, because I feel like talking about intuition is really tough, because it's such a personal thing for every single person, and how it manifests and materializes so different. So it really is a process of attuning to yourself and learning how that voice appears and shows up within you. But I hope you're able to gain something from hearing my own process and how I contend with these things. And I hope it supports you on this journey. So once again, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I love you and I believe in you. Your art is so needed, so go make something awesome today. All right, I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye for now.